Call the January, whoops, wrong month.
We're in February.
We're in Feb.
February, thank you. February 28th.
Could I have two of them?
February 28th, 2019, planning board meeting to order at 6:35. Present Hal Kreider. Gee, I can actually read names tonight. Betty Smith, Vice Chair Lee Baldwin, Chair Bob Stroll, town staff. Voting designation, all members present. We have minutes of February of Valentine's Day to go over.
Motion to accept the minutes.
Second.
Okay. Discussion.
I know you're not warmed up yet, Lee.
Anybody have anything?
I didn't find anything.
Line 23, just the Chair Strobel stated that I'd like to add the words, he believes that a master plan was requested. Because I didn't recall at the time if it was or not. And we'll bring that up when that case is called. Anything else?
It isn't frozen.
Hearing none, all those in favor of assuming the motion and second are for as amended. All those in favor as amended, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, those abstaining. Okay. Okay. First order done. Oop. We have first case tonight, Ledgewood Realty Trust, case 18-13.
Okay, I have a request from the applicant who says they are still working on finishing up the plans for the quarry and will not have them to the planner in time for a 2/28/19 meeting. We request that we continue that meeting to March so that we can have input from the planner on our submission.
Okay.
And that is from Holden Engineering.
Okay.
Move to continue.
Do you have a second?
Second.
Okay, discussion.
To the regularly scheduled March
March 28th.
28th, I think.
28th. Discussion on it? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, those abstaining. Okay. Somehow I don't think the rest of the night is going to go that fast. Okay, next up is case 18-20, 168 Granite Street Properties. Are these new plans, new drawings? Nope.
The only thing I changed on these drawings, one of the lot was, we had it almost 80 feet, so it changed to 100. So we didn't have to request it. That's the only thing that's different on it. So
Okay.
I figured I'd print out another one in color, so in front of you.
Okay. Lovely, thank you. Yeah, just for the board's information, we did get a new letter dated February 28th of revised application for waivers that you should have gotten a copy of.
I have extra copies of it.
Thank you.
Is it revised from what Susan sent
It's
out?
revised from what I forwarded.
I'm
The
sorry.
original waiver request was focusing just on Lot 10, and my staff report from last time had concerns about some additional lots. As Mr. Sargent said, he revised Lot 13, so that one no longer needs a waiver. I still recommended that they add lots 3, 5, and 7, and most of those are just sort of avoiding the issue of what constitutes width on a property, since some of them taper to a point in certain locations. I thought that it would be safer and put this on a sounder footing if we just covered our bases and made sure that those were permissible lots. I had in my prior staff report, lot 16 is another one that tapers to a point. I had in my prior staff report mentioned a problem on lot 3. That was my mistake. There is a wetland that's running very narrow, so there are 2 lines for that and a 3rd line for the property line, and I just mixed up which was which when I was looking at it, so that lot is fine as drawn.
Thank you.
So I would recommend, there are essentially 2 waiver requests, the one for the lot widths on those various properties as shown on the plan. The second being for the length of the road to extend beyond 1,000 feet. I recommend that you all act on the road waiver first, just because if that changes, then some of those properties might change, and we'd prefer to reference the revised plans rather than the plans before you this evening.
Okay.
That makes sense.
You ready?
Yeah, I am. Good evening. My name is Mark Sargent. I'm with the firm of Richard Bartlett and Associates. I'm here tonight representing Granite Street LLC. With me is Mark Hodgson, our attorney here. Mark prepared the waivers for both the lot widths and the road length. And I think that's probably the number one subject we want to get talked about first here anyway. So I was going to let Mark kind of take off on the road.
Go ahead.
Sure.
Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. The waiver request for the length of the road, we tried to explain as well as we could in the letter. That portion of the letter did not change from the prior version. We only changed the lot width area issues to address the concerns raised by staff. When we looked at it, and I think Mark addressed he was involved in the design, the circular portion was put at the 1,000-foot limit in order to minimize any risk of that section becoming isolated. It's circular, so there are, for at least that section, 2 ins and outs, recognizing that is not entirely compliant with the requirement, but it was an intent to minimize any risk for that section. The reason that it was designed this way was to avoid, they looked at, and Mark, and again, is better equipped to explain, but they looked at other alternatives, putting in a second access point, primarily first towards Route 4, kind of looping the road back through to Route 4. You have some steep slopes there and some narrow frontages, which made that, I wouldn't say unfeasible, but less feasible. And the other alternative was to look at a second access point out onto Old Turnpike Road, which is feasible, which could be done. In fact, there's an old woods road there now in that area, and it could be, access could be obtained either where that woods road is or across lot 11, or in that vicinity of lot 11. And that was considered, but overall the designers felt that this was a better product for the town and for everybody involved, because it kept any further development or disturbance away from Flat Meadow Brook, and it minimized any through traffic into the neighborhood of Old Turnpike Road. So, Mark, can you...
Yeah, what's unique about this property is that the developable portion of the property is situated, in this area up here, the very peak of the property. And as you can see, what's shaded there, to access directly from Route 4 would mean access or impacting some steep slopes. So we chose coming around a roadway design that came around the farther end, but makes that road a little bit longer. But it gets up to the developable portion of the property. Thoughts that we had at the time was an access point to Old Turnpike Road. The access point would be essentially through, I guess it'd be Lot 9 here. So it would come down and intersect with Old Turnpike Road in this area.
If you look at the topo lines, you can see that it works pretty good.
And it does work, and it doesn't impact any steep slopes. It doesn't impact any buffers associated with Flat Meadow Brook. But we didn't think that was a good idea, just to protect the resource or keep the road away from that resource of Flat Meadow Brook. That was our thought when we came here back, several years ago, and that's the thought that we continued with. So again, like I said, the unique portion, the part of this property is the developable portion is kind of located a distance from Route 4.
I have a question. I just want to make sure I understand. From Route 4 to the start of the circle is how far?
Is 950 feet.
You're talking along the road, correct? Along the proposed...
Measured along the road.
Measured along
So
proposed
what
road?
you're saying is the back end of the circle,
No. Yeah, well...
how far is the back end of the circle?
What is
To-
approximately this distance?
To the peak of the circle, right here, from Route 4 is 1,660 feet.
From there to there. Is that what you're talking? Does that answer your question, Alan?
Terry will fix it for you if need be.
Yep, sorry.
Does that answer your question?
I think so, yeah.
So in effect, the waiver would be to allow them to go beyond a single access point to approximately 1,660 feet as depicted on the plan.
And what does the reg actually say?
The regulation says no point shall be further than, I can actually read it for you. No
Please.
point along a road shall be more than 1,000 feet from a single point of access.
Okay, so I just want to make sure I understand. The simple interpretation of what you said would be that a road comes in, and if there's a cul-de-sac on the end, the far end of the cul-de-sac would be 1,000 feet. Is that...
To be in compliance.
Well, yeah, I'm asking about the reg. So
It
that...
then goes on to say this is similar to a maximum cul-de-sac length requirement.
Okay.
So we purposely designed the road so that the loop started at less than 1,000 feet from Route 4.
So the Y, that's
Right.
Y aspect
That
of the
is
intersection.
kind of the intersection right there.
Okay, I'll be blunt. I don't think that's what's described in the reg.
That's why the request
we're
is
asking the waiver.
That's why there's a
That's
waiver
the
request.
We agree.
Right, that's what we're talking about now.
Mr. Chairman, may I add a comment?
Sure.
There's some information that came in today, and I apologize for the lateness of it. Our planner had asked me to check on the forms from police and fire, and in checking on the fire department, because that obviously is something the board would want to know about, particularly on a waiver like this. what happened was, as many of you are aware, we went from a part-time to a full-time fire chief within the last month. Apparently what happened was, is that form was, should I say lost in the shuffle, whatever. Our current chief was unaware of it. I mentioned it, both him and our fire inspector, Rich Antone, came down today and looked at the plans, asked some questions, and because it was late in the day, they had some vocal comments but did not have the time to write up something. They said that they would be willing to do that, and that they do want to go forward and work with the board on all applications and review all of them in the future, which would be very beneficial.
Definitely.
In this case, the issue that they raised, a couple of the comments that they made, were that they thought that the 1,000 feet length might be tied to the fact that their maximum hose length is 1,000 feet. So they looked at the plan that's out on the back table, and they said they wanted time to give it some thought and write their own comments, but they said obviously their concern, their biggest concern, would be fire. And they said that there may be other options, and the board hasn't discussed this yet, but there is a, and it's not a planning board regulation, but I did give Mr. Sargent a copy last month of the Board of Selectmen have an ordinance that requires on subdivisions of 10 or more lots that a fire suppression system, a cistern be put in. And they said that that might be a viable option as far as the fire department is concerned for firefighting if there was an adequate supply of firefighting availability further back on the lot. I also
Closer toward the cul-de-sac, in other words.
right from the cul-de-sac back or in that area that would affect any potential residents in that upper end if the board was to consider the waiver. The other, also, the chairman of the Highway Advisory Committee was here at the time, and he was looking at the plan and listening in, and he only expressed a concern about other potential options, such as going out onto Old Turnpike Road, which said if that ends up being a solution, that they would likely want to comment, because if it was a matter of like an emergency exit or the road, but that should not be a viable access for lots, generating more traffic onto that road. That was his singular opinion because of the condition of the town road, that adding additional traffic would be difficult to it. That was his singular position, not the position of the Highway Advisory
Correct.
Committee.
So-
But this was the feedback I received today.
Let me clear, so what Mr. Bailey is asserting on his own is that the condition of Old Turnpike Road does not warrant additional traffic from this subdivision.
That was
if-
his opinion,
Okay,
yes.
just curious, just wanted to clarify what he
He
said.
expressed a concern about that, yes.
Right, okay.
If I could just add one other
Sure.
comment.
Go ahead.
You had asked initially in the very beginning, you had asked if I was aware of any other waivers that were granted by the planning board relative to the 1,000 feet.
Mhm.
The only one that I am aware of And I'm certain it's the only one that's ever been granted, because I was here when the regulation was put in place, is Meadow Lane. And that was an open space development that had open space on the back. And that was granted a waiver for approximately 100 feet, that the cul-de-sac would be, the final point of the cul-de-sac would be at 1,100 feet. And part of the reason for that was, it was not to create additional lots at the back, but it was because there was an existing house and a 10-acre lot that was left on the back end that went down to Northwood Lake. So that is the only time the planning board has waived. It was not for the creation of additional lots.
Yeah. Excuse me while I scribble. Go ahead.
Mark, would you go over again what the alternative would be to come out onto the road?
Sure.
Because I guess I respect Mr. Bailey's opinion, but, you know, we also have an obligation to keep our roads in good shape. So I'm not so sure that that should be the overriding factor. So I want to hear a little bit more about what you talked about in terms of...
What we would do is, where lot 9 is, right here, just cut that road right down through here. There's an existing woods road now.
That's what we walked down when we took the...
With the ZBA.
Yeah.
Right.
Good sight distance either way.
Yeah.
But what it does is, you know, gets us even closer to the Flat Meadow Brook. I mean, we still meet the setback requirements that you have as it relates to wetlands and not impact those. But, you know, we wanted to stay away from that resource.
Would, if you, if I could please, if you were to take that approach, would you keep the circle intact and just add that extra road?
We would.
And then therefore, you got the throughway and then you got the loop, so, okay. So it would still let you use all those lots, but you're saying the added risk is the extra surface area and the water runoff and stuff.
Yeah.
There was an attempt to balance the competing interests.
Sure.
It
Sure.
wasn't, we weren't trying to just flaunt the regulation.
No,
We're
I
trying to balance the
Yeah.
competing interests that are at hand, both for Turnpike Road and for Flat Meadow.
And just, I don't know, you might know this, but the length of that existing woods road to the circle would be approximately about 1,200 feet? No, it shouldn't be that long. About 8?
To about 500.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it would be there would be a bend in it.
It would kind
What,
of, yeah, dog leg over to that, and, you know, it would probably, you know, either we would lose a lot, or we, you know, have to shuffle, or try to shuffle some lots to recuperate that one lost lot.
I'll just say up front, Bob, my worry is about setting a precedent here. I mean, they did a nice job putting the circle in there, but, you know, what if somebody else comes and says, well, due to the shape of my land and the steep slopes and the wetlands, I need a sort of cul-de-sac, but it's not an exact circle, it's more like a elongated circle, and now we're, you know, 2,000 feet in or 3,000 feet in, you know, because somebody decides to, I think we're on a slippery slope, if not a steep slope here.
Well, if I could,
Go ahead.
you know, we would be more than happy to go meet with the fire chief to discuss some of the options that he might be comfortable with to allow this to happen, if the board is, you know, sort of leaning that way, and come back next month with those options.
I think Linda's point is well taken, is that, and I won't apologize on behalf of the town. You have my sympathies because we have been having change in staff
Yeah.
that the fire department has not had a chance to write something up so that we can see it. I would, let me just state for myself, not speaking as anybody, just as one board member, I have difficulties with a long-term event that cuts off access to Route 4. I was one of the lucky people about 4 months after, 2 months after I moved to town, that the tornado came through less than a quarter mile from my house. But I was on the correct side of it, which was good. That being said, the Class 6 road that did cut through was out of commission for 1.5 years. I would not certainly expect that with a town road. But if, let's say for instance, we lose access to something, we get Washington State had 20 inches of rain in 3 days, and the wetlands that cuts across here with 2 lots remaining covers the road, what happens to the other 14? Or, well, it'd be 12 in this case, because 2 would come off of Old Turnpike. And I'm not expecting an answer tonight. No, don't think that. We'll get you in public comment section, ma'am. Right now, your solution is that, well, yeah, they can back up to the cul-de-sac. That doesn't help them get to work. It doesn't help them get to the grocery store. You know, the day-to-day things if they're out for multiple days. I have my own thoughts, but it's not my job to design your plan. That being said, I would like, with the board's approval, to delay talking about this waiver until the applicants had a chance to talk to the fire department.
Bob, I'm going to speak up here because
Sure.
I think what we're asking here is for a complete change in the approach to what the town's been doing. I mean, what's going to happen when when the selectmen then talk to somebody else about 1,000-foot distance? I think if you're going to talk to somebody else, I think you better talk it through everybody up through the selectmen to make sure everybody's on board. I would not personally vote for that unless we went all that way. Just one person's opinion, the fire chief, is not the town.
I agree.
And I think his input is valuable for what we set that limit at, but over the past X number of years, it's been set at 1,000 feet, and it took us a while to come to that conclusion, and it wasn't, I don't think, should be just overturned or changed just because one person talks about one item. So I don't think we need to talk to the chief. I don't.
Anybody
Sorry.
else? That's okay. Anybody else have any thoughts?
I've been comfortable with things that only have one way in and out.
Okay.
How would, if we offered an emergency access, you know, that wasn't built to town standards, but provided some, you know, an access across that lot 9 going to that wasn't open, let's say, you know, for day-to-day use, but would be
That's why it would be
available
emergency
for
access.
emergency access. Would that be something that would be acceptable?
I don't know, we'd have to ask town staff on that. I don't think we have a regulation that allows that. currently, but if,
Well, if the board was amenable to that, you would essentially accept that as a condition of granting the waiver.
right,
And if the board wanted to go that route, I would suggest that the emergency access be built to the town's emergency lane standards.
And I would just note that I understand regulations and their purpose and their goal, but there are waivers for a reason.
exactly.
And
That's why
if
you're
we
here.
can satisfy, I mean, that may be a way to satisfy your concerns and the concerns that might arise of the residents back there or the highway department. It's just an alternative. It seems that it might kind of cut the baby, so to speak.
Yes. Well, your timing, like mentioning that was perfect, because we're not allowed to design your project for you. I don't know what the town emergency standards are, or lane standards are. I know Bennett Bridge Road Extension,
We have them on the
yeah.
class,
Are they essentially-
private class 6, the 67441.
Mhm.
They're listed in that application because people are required to upgrade to that standard
Okay.
on
And
private roads, so
So it's essentially probably 40, how much? 22 feet of lane or 22 feet
I
of
think it, I
total
was
width?
thinking
I
it
thought
was
it was less than
18.
that, yeah.
I think it's 18.
Well, it's
I can get it for you
16
if you
plus,
like, I can grab it.
it's 16 or 18 plus a certain amount on each side.
It's a
So in
gravel.
essence,
It's gravel ditch.
Probably the width is.
in essence, it
larger.
ends up being
Not a paved road.
22.
Right of way.
Right.
Just trying to remember.
Yeah,
That's
22
good.
is
I'm
the
trying
top.
to
There's
not
that.
take the time to go look it up.
No, we don't need to.
But I get it.
We can find
And
that out.
what I'm toying with in this emergency lane access is your well-taken point of trying to not impact Flat Meadow Brook at all. And I think at least 3 of the 4 of us have concerns, and I bet he hasn't spoken, about a second, even a temporary emergency access. One issue that I'd be curious about in kicking the emergency access way around is how do you both provide, well, questions. Let me pose a couple questions and we can think about it. And I'd welcome comments at any point in time. I'm primarily thinking of emergency access as for egress for residents. Other towns that have this provision also grant it for emergency access by vehicles, or by emergency services.
Sure, yeah.
Not necessarily on a life safety, I don't know what I want to call that. Someone's having a heart attack, you're not going to send the ambulance down the emergency access way. They're going to take the main access off Route 4, provided it's not blocked. We're talking, flood, fire, something that blocks the primary access, which typically are not
Long term. Typically.
longer term. You're not talking about someone's, like I said, heart attack ambulance response would not be taken this way. This would be evacuation through for flood, for fire, for something to that effect. How do you provide emergency ingress for emergency services without providing ingress for, let's call them unwanted non-residents?
No, I mean,
And like I
yeah,
said,
yeah,
I'm
and
not
those are things we
expecting-
need to think about,
Yeah,
and there are ways you can do that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. The other question I would have that I would like you to think about Falls Way is the potential impacts on Flat Meadow Brook for an emergency. If the width is 22 feet, 18 feet plus shoulder, how much fill are you looking at? Are you looking at, just for topography, if you put an 18-foot wide gravel lane in, depending on where, I remember walking the Woods Road there currently, but I don't remember exactly how close it gets. Are you going to be putting?
Yeah, it wasn't,
Something
I mean, you can
gravel
see
into
it on there right now, Bob. It's
Yeah. It's close enough.
There's a map in the back.
Okay,
It
fine.
might be
a
more.
little distance from it. That's,
I need to put my reading.
12-foot wide trail now.
That's fine. Okay.
Here's the buffer for the west.
Colored one?
Oh, okay, good.
No, that's,
Yeah, maybe.
the scale.
Okay.
That's a little distance. So I think we have room
You
to
have
do
room
that
to
without impacting the buffer or getting into it. But, an emergency access at 18 versus a full-blown town road at 24
Oh,
and
yeah.
shoulders is, a big difference.
Exactly.
And Mr. Chair, if I could suggest, I think if the board is amenable to that as an option, simply requiring that one be part of the plan would be the condition of approval for the waiver. But then the applicant, I would expect, would have that design worked into the next iteration of their plan that you would then get to see before you approve the entire subdivision.
That's what we would expect, yeah.
Okay.
So we don't need to answer all of the design questions of that tonight. We need
I'm not
to,
expecting to answer
we
those
would just need
questions
to
tonight.
answer the idea in principle.
Exactly. Okay. You have something for me?
Well, only that it might be easy to see the proximity when it's colored.
Oh, I'm good. I just needed to
okay.
get my get my glasses on, or twist my eyes too much. You have thoughts on?
I still worry about the precedent it sets. And I understand the emergency access, but then no, I'm not comforted by that.
Okay.
I'm sorry, but
You need to be sorry. You're entitled to your opinion. That's why we have a board of multiple people.
I mean, for me, it's mostly the precedent, and then, just trying to change it based on one property without a full discussion with the town, I just don't think is the right thing to do. I mean, I'm worried, okay, you do this, then you set a precedent for emergency accesses, which doesn't sound like we've really got a lot of understanding of that either, in terms of what's allowed, what's not allowed, how far do we allow emergency accesses?
I would assume that would follow the same 1,000 feet rule.
I mean, do we even know? I mean, a lot of what I've seen, like for Hudson, they allow it where, okay, the road is basically there, and, oh yes, if you open the gate, you're pretty much there. You know what I mean? It's not one of those where you have to wind your way in and stuff like that. But that's Hudson. I mean, I don't know what we do here, and, I don't even know if we have an example to follow.
Well, if it's based on 1,000-foot hoses, then we have some idea of,
Is that the basis?
That's at least what the fire department has
Well,
given
they
a verbal.
mention that.
They mention
I think there's other information.
There are separate standards related to water for firefighting, because I did want to look those up just to make sure that we had some coverage if we were talking about approving waivers tonight and then coming back with approvals for, or meeting with the fire department. The standard for firefighting in the subdivision is at minimum there shall be a source of water for firefighting within 1 mile along a class 5 or better road of each lot or building site proposed.
So it's-
And various acceptable wet and dry fire hydrants would satisfy that requirement.
So in
Memorial.
this,
So it doesn't sound like if that's a mile, it doesn't sound like that's the reason for the 1,000-foot limit.
Well, that would be, you're within a mile of Northwood Lake.
Right, well, that's what I'm saying, so I guess I'd feel more comfortable if somebody told me what the basis for the 1,000-foot limit is. What-
If
what-
I may just add, historically, the 1,000-foot limit, which is very common in subdivision regulations throughout the state, that was driven, it is true, primarily by hose length back when it was first enacted. So that is actually true. There are probably other good reasons as well, but that was why 1,000 feet was started. A lot of the trucks could only carry up to that limit. So, I mean, historically, that doesn't surprise me. That's how it sort of evolved in the beginning. There are other good reasons for it, as we've discussed, but that's true, factual.
And the basis of the 1 mile is that that's enough time frame to do rotating trucks for your tanker trucks to full source. So you have a nice large water source for firefighting.
We don't have a selectman's rep, because I guess this discussion on the 1,000 feet has come up numerous times at the selectmen's meetings, and they've always pushed back. And that's why I'm really hesitant.
Right.
Really hesitant. And
I guess that's why we're offering to meet with the fire department. I think, historically, as Mark was saying, and I've been in this business for 35 years now. The 1,000 feet has always been fire department driven, and so I think if we can make them comfortable between possibly emergency access way, possibly some other kind of fire protection system up into the cul-de-sac area itself, and we come back to this board with those findings and maybe a report from them, maybe there could be a comfort level there.
The other thing I would want to, I'll hold that thought.
What's the point of the middle of the cul-de-sac, where it comes to the point, where it starts and ends? Wasn't that wetlands and going to be a pond?
There is a wetland there.
Yeah, I seem to remember that they were discussing.
There's a wetland right here.
Right, and that area was going to be.
And whether we can, I don't know if the resource is there that we could create some kind of fire pond to complement that detention basin. I don't know. That's something I guess we could look into.
Isn't that
But
the height of your highest point of land is in the cul-de-sac, correct?
Exactly. Yeah.
So I would not think you would have a reliable water source.
Well, I mean, we have a wetland there
Yeah,
too. So,
true.
And I don't know. I mean, our wetland scientist is here.
Right.
She could probably comment better on
Right.
that. But it might not be the type of resource that the fire department is looking for too.
And like I said, you've got Northwood Lake right across
Exactly,
Route 4. You're well within the regulation of a mile from a firefighting water source. I think it really comes down to a question of, do we find the waiver or the design compatible with 1,000 feet or not?
I'm very leery of changing the precedent. I mean, we've thought about that, people have commented on it, they're comfortable with it, and I don't like the idea of ultimately working backwards into some other number. This group comes along and says, well, we're going to do it, but we're going to have a 500-foot emergency way. And then somebody else says, well, we're going to go 1,000 feet plus a half-mile loop, and we're going to do it by having a, 3/4 of a mile thing with another loop on it. That's the emergency access. I mean, I can just see this whole thing going down the wrong slope.
So let me run similar to your thoughts. One of the goals that the applicant has stated is not to impact Flat Meadow Brook. We have the Highway Advisory recommending not to add dump traffic onto Old Turnpike Road. If we reject the waiver, and I'm not saying this is an ultimatum in any way, shape, or form, the applicant would be within his rights, if they want to proceed with the subdivision, to redesign it for through traffic onto Old Turnpike Road, which then negates or runs considerably more impact onto Old Turnpike Road or possibly Flat Meadow Brook, depending on the design, which we haven't seen, and that's not our job to design that alternate. So
What do you think would change in terms of traffic patterns?
I have no idea. That's not my job. That's the applicant's jobs.
I mean, there's an overall requirement, regardless of what design we use, that there's no change in water flow off the thing. So, from that perspective,
that's stormwater. They're talking
Right.
water quality.
right? Say that again.
There's no flow pre-development from post-development.
Right.
Change pre-development versus post-development, but that's for stormwater.
Right.
And we're talking traffic quality by adding a road in the vicinity of Flat Meadow Brook. Cheat flow off of Flat Meadow picks up anything that's on the road water surface. And we'll go into necessarily without, we're talking theoretical design here. I'm just,
My recollection of the slopes is most of that goes over that way anyway. That's what the slopes look
Yeah.
like to me.
yep.
I mean, or that's my
I
recollection.
mean, we can go round and round on this.
Well, I think
I'd
I've
entertain a
stated.
motion.
Before entertaining a motion, I would suggest reopening a public hearing
Sure.
so that the public can have some input onto
Wow.
Okay.
the waivers.
Were you waving
Yes.
your hand the whole time?
Sorry.
If you're not going to reopen the public hearing again for the second
I
waiver,
would open the public hearing again for the second waiver
okay,
after we've had a chance to discuss it.
then I guess this one.
Okay, so yes, at this point in time, I'll open public comment on the application, specifically dealing with the consideration of the waiver of the 1,000 feet from a single point of entrance. You'll have an opportunity to speak about the other waiver and the application in general at another point in time. But right now, I'd like to hear about just the 1,000-foot aspect.
Thank you. My name is Pam Sanderson. I live at 132 Old Turnpike Road, opposite Flat Meadow Brook and opposite lots 9, 8, 7, right in there. Specifically, I am referencing tonight Lot 9, that you are currently in discussion about cutting through for either emergency or for road surface. And once again, these are already been introduced. I neglected to point out which photos specifically referenced Lot 9 and which photos were further down the road where the flooding was occurring last meeting. And which last meeting I was concerned about flooding over Route 4 in the meadow section. It did indeed flood over that night. So that was full flooding. So I'm approaching, just to be clear, this is Lot 9, where you want to cut your road through. This is Lot 9. This is Lot 9. This is where we walk through, over here. And the other side, these here go into the meadow section, but up here is the major washout that occurred on Lot 9.
So which way is lot
So,
9 on this?
Lot 9's right here, and this is the flooding we're talking about. So this is Matt Osborne. His home was in danger because of the floodwaters that came across and took out here. So that pathway that you walked across, I personally have watched people fill that back in over the years because it has been washed out from this type of flooding on that bend.
So lot 9 is this right here?
Yeah, this is lot 9, and this is where we walked in. And this is Matt Osborne's driveway, the gray house that you see on the map, and we walked in here. So this road was gone.
Right.
All right, and these are the ones that are further down. Okay, and this is over at the other side by McCarrow. So it was a double washout that time. These pictures here from January 15th and March 30th, and I think there's one more from March 31st, all reflect the property on Old Turnpike Road, which is lot 9, what's the number? Lot 8, is it? And lot 7. So we're looking at their surveying marks. I'm sorry, I need one more. And these are all digitized, so they can be blown up. My point is that the water levels exceeded where the ribbon markers were. So what we see here as potential high water, during flooding and winter storm situations, it gets much higher. So some of these are the meadow that is opposite lot 9 where the flooding comes across. So this would be meadowland that's on the other side of the road from lot 9. So this is the water that floods across. So at this point in time, the road did not wash out.
The road is further further down the road.
No, that's his property.
Yeah, no, I understand, but where the road is that we walked, that's further down than where it's crossed over?
No. Where the road is, I gotta go to the first one. Where the road is if we were see the width here, that was coming up on Matt Osborne's land, and we crossed the road, Old Turnpike Road, and entered the woods right there. So.
Yeah, but which way does this look? Is this looking
west.
towards the subject property?
No, this is the opposite side of the street, and this is the subject property. So the meadow is across the road, and this is the property, lot 9. So I apologize if they're not all fully listed. So once again, you may have parked your car right here, and we walked into the woods here. So the point would be for emergency access, even if you cut an emergency access through there, if the road washes out, which it did, what, a month ago? It didn't wash out, it covered, excuse me, it covered. You're still putting additional traffic at risk. So to try to put an emergency access or a road surface through lot 9, I don't think you can do it with the width. And you've got an abutter over there that you've got to go by his property lines. You've got other lots beyond the abutter. But again, you're still putting people at a potential where they could be cut off from emergency services. Now, cutting into Route 4 with a second entrance, I wonder about the potential of coming down through the existing house lot that is on Route 4. And that's just my question, whether or not looping in and cutting down through. And that lot there is a separate lot, the camp that is there currently, but it's also part of the parcel owned by the owners. So I'm just wondering, if you have to have a second entrance exit onto Route 4, you've got the ability to go through the building. It's not a historical landmark.
I think she's talking right
That's
there.
just my question.
Talking.
Okay.
That's
Yeah, right
impossible
there.
right there to do that. between ledge and
That's on a
steep
hill,
slopes,
isn't it?
yeah.
But there is
That's-
kind of a road through there.
Yeah, not, that
side.
meets anywhere near town
It's
standards.
not going to have the sight line, I
No.
don't think there, it's on where it's
It
located.
it is,
So that was the question, but again, so representing for Flat Meadow Brook, but also for that little walkway that we went through. Personally, I would testify to that being washed out. Shortly after it was first created, it washed out, it had to be more fill put in and another drain pipe put in. I can't remember the name of the fellow that did it, Cal. He was working on it on 9/11, and I had to go over and tell him what was happening. So this, the road has a history and the flooding has a history. So I just want to make sure you know that when we're talking about this possibility of having some emergency exit onto Route 4, onto Old Turnpike Road, that you're talking about Lot 9. Lot 9 floods.
Yeah.
That's it. Thank you.
So
Thank you.
I realize you're not a trained hydrologist or whatever the right word
I'm
is,
brilliant, though.
but we have someone here. But
We do have a hydrologist here, though, yeah.
I'm just curious as to your opinion, because Ms. Boudreau called her husband and said, if you give me $100,000, we can fix the water flowing underneath the road. But,
He was talking probably
but
in the meadow
is-
section.
but is that really the solution, or does it really back up?
Just keep in mind, Hal, that there's 3 flooding areas.
Yeah.
So a month ago was flooding area number 1, which is the meadows, which usually goes. That's down towards the Heritage Hardware Store. So it's in the flat dip as you first enter
Yeah.
Old Turnpike.
That's the 100,000.
Yeah, that's the 100,000 for that stretch. Now you come across into by Jan McCarowitz's. That is the one with the massive drain pipe with the 2 higher, like 15-foot spillover drain pipes that so far, since their installation, while they a couple times a year the water does get that high, it has not flooded. However, water builds up on the
I don't know
causeway
enough to
over
tell you that.
those
Maybe the engineer.
pipes. And then the third location is right next to Lot 9 in that meadow from Matt Osborne's house across. And that is the full flat meadow. And that flat meadow there is prime wetland.
Concern you?
So there's not a lot you can do with what's happening on the other side of the road because that's prime wetland.
So is it
Where's prime wetland?
on the,
Beside Mount
Your
Osborne?
yeah, your prime wetland.
so
Excuse me for one second. Could I just say, if you push that button, you won't pick up
Oh,
on the
thank
mic.
yeah, sir, yours
Gotta
too.
hold it.
Yeah, I couldn't see it.
Yeah, the old term, the meadow, the heavy water spots.
Well, here's what I'm getting at, because, and I may be going off on a little tangent, so pull me back. But, it is the responsibility of the town to keep the roads the way they should be.
Correct.
And I guess to, is it Pam or Pat?
Pam
Pam's point,
Sanderson's.
if it's flooding because we haven't done the right thing there, we should not penalize these folks for that situation, if you know what I mean. So
I got it.
if by fixing something, flowing under the road there so it flows sufficiently so they can put their road in there, then I think that's something we have to consider.
We also need to consider that regardless of past decisions by the town, if we approve this waiver in this subdivision, we are knowingly making a decision that will put additional people at risk until that problem is fixed.
And you can't do that.
Say that again. I'm not sure your point on that.
If
or how
this
that works.
subdivision, theoretically, if this subdivision goes through
Correct.
and the town does not, well, let me rephrase that. Regardless of past decisions by the town, Old Turnpike Road is Old Turnpike Road.
Right.
It is subject to flooding beyond this point. If we, as a planning board, go ahead and approve this design for this subdivision.
As is.
With, well, not as is, but with a potential emergency egress or secondary road or
Yeah.
exits, actually we have two lots that are empty or having driveway access onto Old Turnpike Road.
Yeah.
If we go ahead and approve that, we are knowingly adding traffic to an already bad situation.
Only if they choose to go that way.
Well, the lots
Well,
that
there-
go
there
onto
are two
Old
lots that
Turnpike
go that
Road
way.
don't really have a choice.
Yeah, there's no choice of,
Live there.
Oh, yeah, but that's
that's
they're
two lots.
already that way now on this drawing, aren't they?
No.
There's
The two lots in the corner, there are two lots that have driveway access onto Old Turnpike Road regardless.
Right.
Yes,
You're knowingly putting them at risk. If you
They're not
approve.
lots yet.
they're not lots yet if we approve it as written or as designed. If we grant the waiver with a condition of emergency egress, then we potentially put more people. Because my suspicion, I don't know, you might be able to tell me or hypothetical is that if Old Turnpike Road floods both sides significantly, you might have enough water in there to cut off the driveway. I don't know.
Of these two lots here.
No. If there's enough flooding to impact a potential emergency egress, as Ms. Sanderson has pointed out, and further down on the meadow section of Old Turnpike Road, that negates our emergency egress plus those two lots that have that access Old Turnpike Road.
You say it negates them.
Hal, it's a dead-end road.
It's a dead end road. You can't,
What
they
does
can't get out.
what does negate mean?
Means
They
if the
stop.
meadows are flooded,
So you mean it puts them in
nobody can
danger?
get out.
Yes.
You mean
Yes.
I'm not understanding the word negates. You're saying they
Nobody
lose
can
their
get out.
access.
They lose, they're
Emergency.
stuck at home. They can't get emergency access, they can't get out to Route 4, they can't get into Route 4 except for by boat.
Yeah. Okay.
My suspicion is that if that flooding scenario occurred, that there might be enough water coming down to also cut off this access. I don't know.
I
I
thought,
think
No.
our engineer can answer that.
I would hope so.
Yeah.
I don't know.
does the water flow down through that way?
Yeah, see that
Is
orange
there
is
enough height
wetlands.
at
It's
the
where water
access on Route 4?
Culverts to withstand a, 100-year storm or?
I don't know what those culverts were designed for, the ones that exist.
No, the ones for our road.
They were based on a 25-year.
25.
25?
Mm.
Yeah. I don't know.
Bob, you're saying the water from Flat Meadow Brook, which is like up here in the middle, is going to end up down there?
No. If there's enough water coming down
Down from where?
from the rain,
Oh, just
raining.
down.
it's
Okay.
raining,
Yeah.
that covers Old Turnpike Road, there might be enough coming down through this wetland to cut off, or coming down here into the detention pond. I don't know. But it doesn't sound like it's an issue. Just hearing comments. So what's the board's pleasure? We've been kicking this around for a good while.
You have one other person.
Oh, yes,
One other-
true.
Did you want to speak? I'm sorry.
Are you,
I am done.
you're
I
done?
yield.
Okay. You yield? Okay.
Take
You
the
need to use the mic,
microphone,
you need to tell us who you are.
My name is Lori Cascadden. I live at 1521 First New Hampshire Turnpike. When Pam was, if I understood her correctly, of an entrance and exit where the Campbell's house is now, and I thought I heard people saying that wouldn't work. I just wanted to say that as somebody that comes in and out every day, that road is already extremely dangerous. And
On
that-
Route 4, you're
Yeah.
talking?
And I know that may be another part of the hearing, depending where this goes, but it's always a wait and extremely dangerous, and it's especially dangerous when I'm coming, like, from the hardware store
Oh,
to
yeah.
turn in, and I have a blinker on and being passed, the cars are okay, but the tractor trailers,
Just blow you right off the road.
it's pretty scary.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
If I may
Sure.
address a couple of things. I would note Old Turnpike Road is a Class 5 road. And as a matter of right, if those lots meet town standards, they're entitled to access onto that road. And if you have a problem with your road,
Yeah, we have to fix it.
I think at some point you have
Oh.
to do something about it.
Yeah.
I also have sat on the.
That said, I would respectfully suggest that the speakers have sort of made our argument for the waiver request because of the potential concerns going down towards Old Turnpike Road. And just as a thought, to put it, the town adopted the 1,000-foot standard, but they also adopted the 4 waiver criteria for a reason. And I just leave it at that.
I know one of the criteria for the waivers and in general is unique properties of the land. And unfortunately for us, there is a lot of other aspects of this application that are contingent on granting this waiver, so it's something we need to do. Well, we need to discuss it, decide it. And want to apply that we need to grant the waiver. That's for our own vote.
And again, by the way, we would be happy to look at the emergency access. However, if the board isn't inclined to grant it, even if we don't want to spin our wheels any more than waste the board's.
No, I understand
Exactly.
completely.
Exactly. Well, let me, is there any other public comment on the 1,000-foot waiver? First, let me, 1 second, Pam. Anyone else want to speak before giving a second chance? Okay, go ahead.
I just need to shine, that's all. I just wanted to state that I was confused when you said about not waiting or for the fire chief to write something as he was one person, and I was not sure what you meant by that.
Oh, sure.
I mean, he may be one person, but he's an important one person. He's a rescuer, a servant of this town who saved lives, like a selectman or other people that are here. So I guess from my part of a butter or taxpayer, I want that input.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I can answer your question
Sure.
if you'd like. Okay.
Please.
So what I'm worried about is granting the waiver will not nullify the intent and purpose of this regulation. Okay. So over the course of many years, we've had this regulation. It's been discussed. People have worked on it. And there's been no exception except for one very limited exception that Linda talked about. And so I'm personally leery about upsetting that long-standing precedent by one conversation with the police chief.
Sure.
And that's my whole concern. And it relates to people in the town in general don't like when one person says something and then all of a sudden you swing one way or the other. They like to do it by consensus. They like to have other people have a chance to have input. And I don't think we should just go have a conversation with the chief and he says, "Oh, I don't see anything, yeah, I guess we could live with it." Well, what about the other folks that have lived with this, studied it, and upheld it for the last 10, 12 years? We got to deal with them.
I would say that the police chief would be an official report, and that I would carry more weight than just
It would carry
one person. Yeah, his
I mean, he's
official
one.
opinion.
It's one opinion, and it's an important one. And I'm not trying to diminish his input, but I don't think he's the only one that has input on this.
I think in areas of public safety, that when we make a decision on behalf of the residents of this town and the visitors to this town, that public safety is number one.
Right.
And so the more information and input that you receive from your safety officers, whether it be police, fire, or DES or environmental services or engineer. The more that you know, the better protected we are as a town. So I would put that first and foremost on in regarding the decision.
Okay.
So thank you.
Yeah. I think you know where I stand.
Well, right, and I'm curious as to where we want to go. I'd entertain a motion if somebody wanted to make one, or we could, I could ask for a sense of the board if you want.
I would want to note for the record before any vote takes place, since we have 4 members and it's an even 2-2 vote would be a failed vote.
Right.
You do need a majority to grant the waiver.
Okay.
And they could continue it as well and get additional input. Another option.
For continuing it to get the rest of the input.
That would be my pleasure as well.
That
I would like to hear it from the fire chief.
would be my point. I mean, right now, we're just spinning wheels.
Yeah.
And there might be something that the fire chief came up with that would solve the problem. Things do happen sometimes.
I mean,
That's without, the sense of the board is to wait on that waiver. That would give the applicant a chance to talk to the fire chief. Assuming that would, as you stated, that would be, I think, your willingness to do so. I would prefer to have the input from the fire department, more than just verbal, which they are amenable to doing.
I guess when you speak with them, will you speak there with Linda also, or how does that work?
Well, I guess I would be inclined to call the fire chief and see if we could set up an appointment to meet with him, and if Linda would like to be there, she'd be certainly more than welcome to join us.
Well,
Not usually, but it's fine.
well, here's my question, and I guess it relates back to this. I think the chief needs to understand that we're talking about a precedent here. And, that this will affect other decisions also, and that this is a long-standing regulation we have. We've not granted variance on this in how many years, Linda?
A long time.
Yeah. So,
Over 10 years.
and that's my concern,
15.
and that's why I said I think we need this discussed. Changing it, I think, needs to be discussed with just more than the police chief. But if you want to talk to the police chief, that's fine with me.
Well,
But
we're going to
I
talk to
think
the
we
fire
were
chief.
talking
Fire
about the
chief.
fire chief.
fire chief, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Well, the other
Gotcha.
option would be to have James involved with police and fire both, but that really, the police chief may have comments relative to the idea of an emergency lane going out there.
Well, and
Other things, I don't know if
the other thing I'd want to make sure
amenable to-
is that when we get to the selectmen, that the selectmen give them the building permit. I mean, the selectmen ultimately sign the building permits.
Well,
And they haven't signed, and the
Building
selectmen,
inspector does.
and they haven't signed any that have been more than 1,000 feet.
Right.
So,
But if this is an
Okay.
approved subdivision, then they would sign it. I don't think they'd have an option.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But they have not, up to this point, when it came up to the 1,000-foot question, they've not.
Because we haven't had any.
No, but
approved.
on other ones where they've had the 1,000-foot thing.
Do you have any idea how many applications have asked for?
There's been some large subdivisions, I can think of one in particular, on the backside of Northwood Lake that
Yeah.
came in, was told about the 1,000 feet, and came in twice, I think, and ultimately, that land is still sitting there undeveloped.
And I worked on that subdivision,
Thinking.
and it was abandoned because of the economy, too, so that was one of the reasons.
Okay. At this point, I think it's, without taking an official vote on the waiver, I think 3 of us would like input from the fire department in, and whether that's sitting. Sorry.
Now you know why I don't like those chairs.
Yeah.
Order.
I'll leave it up to town staff as to who is attending, if anybody, or, something. I would like just a written statement of comments, or verbal would be, from town staff would be fine. But that's, anybody have any preference on that? We usually ask for a form from the fire department for review. So
I
that'd
think
be
they're willing to provide some written comments.
okay.
And they're willing to sit down and,
Yep.
because regardless of the 1,000-foot waiver, they still have to deal with the selectmen's regulation on the water suppression.
Right.
So I think they will be looking at it from their approach as well, and how they want to address that.
And I'm making the assumption that coming next month would be okay.
Yes, yeah, I know, we'll, I will give the fire chief a call tomorrow to see how soon I can set up an appointment to meet with him.
Okay. Where are we with the time frame? Do we need a continuance? I think so.
You don't need a motion to continue until you're done talking with the case, and you can continue the entire case.
Okay.
So you don't need a motion to continue the waiver discussion. You just
Okay.
need to not call the question on
Okay.
that waiver.
Good. Just wanted to double check. Okay.
All right,
I think
thank you
we'll
for your
see
time.
you next month. Thank you.
If that's all you're talking about this application, then you would need a motion to continue the application.
Well,
Now, what was the date that the application was accepted? So
That's why I
we
was-
do need the applicant to request that continuance.
that's what I was getting at.
Okay,
That's what Bob was saying.
so do I have to do that in writing?
No,
No,
just
you can,
say it.
okay, till March 28th. Okay. I would entertain a motion to that effect.
So moved.
Okay, second. Okay, motion by Ms. B. Smith, second by Ms. Baldwin to continue the case 18-20 to March 28th. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Mr. Kreider, do you have a vote? You want to continue to next month?
Aye, yes,
Okay.
that's fine.
All those opposed?
Aye.
Those abstaining?
Sorry.
Thank you. We'll see you. Thank you.
It was accepted in December.
So that's why I got to second it. You weren't paying attention.
Accepted.
I was just
Well,
going
I
down,
didn't even see your mouth move. That's the only reason.
Okay, so
I was just going down through that list of,
Okay.
Of
yeah,
things,
yeah.
your notes.
So, James or Bob,
Yep.
let me make sure I understand. To grant the waiver, you need to meet all 4 of the conditions, correct?
According to state law, yes. You have to find in favor of those 4 conditions.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll see you next month.
Oh, now, since they've left, are we allowed to ask any more questions about this? Because I'm not sure I still quite understand
Nope.
this.
You are not allowed to ask anything else about that application.
Comes the word.
Okay.
Yep.
Are you submitting these?
Yes, you have those.
They've been living in the
They were submitted
say, I
last,
thought we
land use
had
office
these,
for a
yeah.
bit.
Okay.
yeah, and I just
Okay.
request them to come forth each time because I like showing them.
I sensed your enthusiasm.
I'd say stay warm, but I think you will. I love this hat.
Okay.
Okay.
Good night, Pam.
Mr. Oliva, welcome back.
That would make this one look easy.
Hey, wait a second. Did I see a circular drive on this one too?
Yeah,
No.
How?
1,600 feet into the lake.
Yeah, you're gonna do a floating
Keep it
bridge.
up, and it might be
Oh, a floating classroom?
Exactly.
Say that again?
Can I take a high school then?
I know.
Considered justifiable.
Oh.
Okay, I'll call our next case of 19-1. Go Brown Northwood
Ooh,
Academy.
first of the year.
All right. My name's Jeff Oliva. I'm here representing the Academy for this project that is a revision to Wigan Hall. I know you folks talked about the project last meeting where the application was submitted. I have some revised plans I submitted to planning earlier in the week. I have big copies here and some 11 by 17s.
So you can see?
Wow. So here's what I'll do. Kind of spread them out this way. Kind of share around.
Probably the
Yeah.
three of us could share. And if
I've got.
corner.
Did it open the microphone?
And
Actually,
Can you shoot around?
yeah, I've got another one too here.
he's got plenty.
Can we have one for the
He's got
file? or-
plenty.
Yeah,
This one.
Oh, okay.
yeah, and I've got another one here too. So
So,
you can go that way.
Jeff, just for reference, what were you here for last?
I was here for last for Johnson's.
That's what it was, okay. Thank you.
Which they finally finished.
Finally.
They
All
did
right.
a collaboration.
Yeah. Yeah.
It does look
Second on
nice.
track. He's on the
All
clock.
right. So.
Yeah, go ahead.
So before we get to that, I know there was questions that came from staff asking about, okay, to get a perspective about where this is on campus. So I also submitted with the last application two plans. One that started with an overall plan here to show where we are. We've got Route 4 in the middle.
Okay.
Here's where all the fields are on the right-hand side if you're heading to Concord. And on the left-hand side, there's still more campus. This black dot
Very
here
nice.
is where Wigan Hall is with respect to the placement on the campus.
Okay.
You've seen that.
It's
I also
essentially
have
the-
it shown on here with respect to the tax maps.
And it's essentially the westernmost
Westernmost,
on the
Yeah,
south side.
on the south side.
southwesternmost
That's right.
side.
Yep,
White building.
Can you show
Exactly.
Lucy,
Yeah.
please?
sure. So if we look at where the whole campus is here, it's the building that's down on this. Here's where the main entrance administration
The old
office,
building with the.
offices on that side.
It's
It's an
to
older
the
building.
It's the very
Yes,
last
the-
building.
If you're
isn't it?
It's the very last,
Facing
it's the
the
very last
Goodwill
building when you're
Hotel.
heading towards
Yes,
Concord.
it's on
it's
the
to the
backside, right.
Yeah.
It's
Just
the house-looking one.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
Yeah.
okay.
yes.
So that's where we're at.
Uh-huh.
So,
So are you taking down?
We're taking down probably 3/4 of it.
Okay.
It's the whole area on the front. And what the building does now, it has classrooms for music and art. And the spaces are very small. They don't have enough room to get the proper equipment in for the art classes and for rehearsals and things like that. So the idea with this addition is to create better spaces for that area. The back side of Wigan Hall that is on the lake side that we're not touching, that's at the bottom of the page, was a part that was renovated, I'm not sure how many years ago, but that has kind of 2 stories. It's got a usable basement and the first floor that will tie into this area for the new building here. I put a dashed line on the plan to indicate where the break would be. So if you can see that there's that rectangle on the bottom of the page. Yep, right there. That creates the area that's really going to stay as part of Wigan Hall. The rest of the area from there towards Route 4 would be demolished and rebuilt. And in the original submission, you folks had copies of what the architecture is going to look like that.
so does the existing building go back into here? or-
Yeah, that dash line on there, that was another question that came from James, is that to give you folks an idea, because I did provide an existing conditions plan, but to be able to have an overlay to look at what the existing Wigan Hall is compared to what the proposed. So I have on this plan, you can see a dash line that indicates where the outline of the existing building is, and then what the new building footprint is going to be on that side. So as a result, we had to make a little bit of changes to the parking that you see up on the eastern side of the property, up on that. And as a result, the current plan, parking goes all the way towards the back. So we're reducing 4 or 5 parking spaces. And there can be, those are predominantly staff parking, and they're going to be placed on other places on campus. And what we're doing there is we're stopping that potential for people to park there to make it safer for the students as they go back and forth to classes between the two buildings.
So what's the traffic flow here, Jeff? What happens right here? Is there traffic that?
That's all people traffic.
People traffic
Yeah.
only, so
Yeah.
that do not enter, so that people backing out here don't.
That's right, yeah, so, because right now, if I have the plans from last meeting, you can park all the way up to the front of the building.
Yeah.
And we're getting rid of that aspect of it.
Yeah,
So
okay.
we're gonna have the 5 spaces that are shown there, and the rest of it's gonna be landscaped and regraded. The building will now have ADA access where it doesn't, for people that come from the other portions of there. And that's really what it is. It's a very minor impact. Most of the development is already over existing paved areas. It's a little bit of an increase in impervious when we take out grass and replace it with building that we're replacing with grass in landscaped area.
This driveway already exists?
Yeah, everything exists around the building and down through that,
Including this parking?
including that parking lot on that side. Yep.
So it's really, the changes are,
It's really, we're gonna knock the building down in that front, we're gonna create that block in the front.
so that and the 5 spaces?
And we're gonna adjust the parking on that side, correct?
There's already parking here, isn't there?
There is, yes.
So it's just fitting it in a little
Yeah,
better?
we had to move the pavement out a little bit so that we had enough room to make it meet the code requirements for a car backing
Backing
out.
out, yeah.
You really want, I mean, your ordinance, I think, is 18.5-foot deep spaces.
18,
Yeah.
9 by 18.
And so you need that, and you need 24 feet behind that for a car to back up and turn around. Currently, it didn't have it. If we tried to keep it that way, it wouldn't be safe enough.
Yeah,
So
okay.
that's why we've pushed that pavement out back.
So
Push it out a
Yeah,
little
okay.
bit. So we've got that kind of, that light shade indicates the new pavement. All the darker areas you see are areas that are gonna be landscaped and redressed from what they were before.
So minimal new paving.
Yeah, very minimal.
What's the saw cut for?
What's
The saw cut?
Oh, this saw cut is just, because that would, the pavement's pretty good as it comes in, and we'll saw cut there because we're gonna be regrading, and that'll be the match line for the new pavement as it comes through. Because that would all be disturbed and destroyed by the equipment for the excavation. So we look at that as being able to work around that.
And this is 1 story?
It's 1 story, yep. But I think they are going to design it with the capability that if they have demands in the future, that they could take that roof off and go up. So I think the architect's going to plan on to provision to make the footings a little bit bigger, make the framing just a little bit more, just for a little bit long-range planning. But right now, that building is a single-story building.
So does the back drop off?
The back does. There's a basement level, and there's stairs internal that go down to that lower level.
But they don't use that?
They do. They do use that
Oh,
lower
okay.
space. Yep.
Okay, so it's,
Rooms, isn't it?
It is.
yeah, so it is really two levels on the back part.
In the
Right,
back
right.
portion, yes.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah,
but the
but the
new
new addition-
building is gonna be
Oh.
1 level.
Yeah, the new structure will be 1 level. And at grade. If you, I know the application I had a narrative, I had some pictures, I believe. You can see that there's all kinds of funky stairs and different access ways. Right now, there's a 2nd story above the existing, but it's used for like a part-time person's office because it's very narrow in that old building, and nobody, obviously they're not going to put students up there. But with this new addition and the way it's going to be placed and graded out, we'd have easier access to get in and out of the building.
Where's the handicapped access?
The
This-
handicap
Where it says
access,
ADA.
yep,
I don't-
down
I don't
towards
s-
towards
I
the
don't see
middle of that.
Oh,
Yeah,
here.
right through there. Yep. So we've regraded that area because there are also doors on that side of the existing building that go into that space. It's kind of like a covered canopy. Those are all going to stay because that's the main floor level that's going to match all the way through the rest of the building. And we can grade from there down and meet the ADA requirements to get it back into the walkway and connect to the science building, which has 1 accessible means of egress out for a student.
So no access out the front, correct?
No access there, no. There currently is a door there now, but there
Yeah.
will not be now in the future.
What about ADA parking?
We talked about that with the camp, with Karen, and there's a letter in the package. I don't know, did you folks see that? I'm assuming you sent that. I've got a copy too. I can pass that out. That was, again, it was a question that came from I have that here. It was a question that came from your last meeting about asking about parking. So I asked the assistant headmaster, Karen Lasky, to address those questions because there was comments about if there's adequate parking for the relocated staff. That staff parking on there, the idea is that if they need ADA parking, then they would just go down and use it, but they have their other main access ADA parking is up the hill for the majority of the people that come in for public features, public events. That this building isn't designed for that. It's purely classrooms. So the space that we needed there, they have access for accessible units otherwise.
Okay. Just curious.
Yeah. Yeah.
In the future, if you ever had an ADA staffer.
Yeah, yeah, and if we did, what we would do is just, they would end up restriping something out there to make that work.
So people that come in here can go around the back
They
now.
can, but they really don't, because it doesn't come up that way. That's more of an access way to get for like a fire lane on the back of the building, and it takes you down to behind Wigan Hall is where the pump station is for the sewer pumps that pump the wastewater up into the leach field that's actually on the other side of Route 4.
So where does this go then?
That goes down around the back, and it goes down around the back of the science building, right, that's underneath your right arm.
Okay.
So if we look at here, it might be a little hard to see if this is the road
goes
that comes
down
down
there,
and comes to the back of this. That's the science building through here.
No, you did not.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yep.
I think we may have missed a minor detail, accepting the application.
Oh, yeah, we did.
How about that? You got right into it.
Thank you,
We did.
Susan.
Well, I was like, maybe they did it last meeting, I don't know.
No, we didn't.
We all
I
get,
didn't see that.
we
on
all
was a
the-
word
get so
count.
into
Notes are
looking
here
at
in
it
the
and
minutes.
hearing about it, we forgot.
Maybe it wasn't a tape.
I was trying to speed up time because I know you had
Oh,
been
no.
reading from last.
Yeah.
And
Hey, while you're looking for that, Bob, I'm gonna get some
yeah,
water.
you're still listening though. Actually, no, we can't.
No,
We lost our quorum and we
Had to wait.
can't before the motion to accept the application is complete.
Hurry up, Hal.
And we have quorum again.
Yes, we do.
Quorum has returned.
So I'd entertain a motion on completeness.
Second. Oh, did I get ahead of you, Betty?
I don't think so. I
You can't do the second without the first.
Well, that's why I asked if I got ahead of you.
Motion to accept as complete.
Second.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Motion by Ms. B. Smith, second by Mr. Kreider. Discussion, hearing none. All those in favor of finding application 19-1 complete, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, those abstaining. Let me read the abutters list. George Lucy of Arlington, Mass. Richard Pinsence of Northwood, and Megan Owen of Northwood. Congregational Church of Northwood, and Town of Northwood. No, you can't be that.
Yeah.
She's here sometimes.
Not
Not here, not tonight, though. Okay, now we're on the clock. Thank you for correcting me. It's about the third time I think I've done that in 10 years, but oh well. It happens. It's been a long day. My brain is elsewhere. Okay.
Yep, so the intent here is also to, once approval, they are ready to start moving equipment and kids out of that class, out of that building, and that demo and work is gonna start this spring, so that that building's up and ready to be used during fall.
Okay.
Yep, so they're
Good for
ready,
you.
they're ready to go. Yep.
We're already at the point of enclosure. 14 classroom addition.
Oh, yeah,
You're
yeah.
Good for you.
Yeah. Well, you remember what we did over at Smith Hall? We punched that
Yeah, that's true.
project out real fast
Yes.
in the summertime. And we had bad rain.
Did we find anything out about a overall plan for Co-Brown?
I think he provided one. I mean, the
So
layout.
did you do research to see if somebody officially asked for one in the past?
I could not find it. I think it was
No.
discussed. I don't
Yeah.
think,
I think it was.
there's always been this discussion about a potential master plan, but there's always projects that are,
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I'll give a little
Waiting
background. I'll give a little
approval.
background because we were hired back in 2007 to assist the academy in putting this master plan together as they were starting to move forward, realizes that they needed to expand. And one of them was really doing the whole athletic fields up on that part.
I think that's when
That's when
the
we
discussion
we came
about a
through.
master plan came up.
Yeah, yeah, and you
Yeah,
folks
I-
have all those plans, and over the times we've been doing these little hodgepodge, I'm not gonna call them hodgepodge, but they're decent projects that are adding on around the campus. So really, you still have the main plans of the campus, and that's kind of where that's how I derived this plan that I submitted earlier in the week that we've generated with, when we had the original campus flown, and we've added stuff on over the years onto that.
Yeah, I guess the discussion that I recollect, that was really what I was hoping for, was just something to overall situate
Oh, see.
this building so we can see where it is relative to everything else,
Okay.
and that there was no question about it. As far as any other master plans, you know, they might be helpful for other things, but this is really the only thing that I was hoping to get.
Okay.
I think there was two separate things. I think there was the
Yeah.
request for the big overall, like an
Yes.
overall plan, but I think Bob
Specifically
also
here.
recalled, and I remembered myself, but I think it was more just a general discussion at the time the work was being done. And at that point, the senior parking lot was, well, we don't know where we're going with that, and I don't think there was ever a concrete master plan that.
No, but and really the master plan was really more on the other side of the street, because this side is really developed where it is.
Exactly. Yes.
We had, if you remember correctly, we had the road that goes out to Bow Lake Road,
Right,
and that connection and that traffic review and the DOT review and all that study that goes on with
Oh,
that.
yeah.
So, Jeff, can you submit that overall drawing also as part of this work?
I did. I sent a copy to town staff
Oh, okay.
earlier in the week with the updated plans.
Okay.
So that is on file in town.
And we would expect that when the final plan set comes in, that sheet's going to be
Included?
included with that.
Yeah, okay, good.
And as far as that discussion, Bob, I did go back to, just a computer search on planning board minutes back to 2000, and there was just a little general discussion here and there, but nothing beyond
Like I said,
that I could.
I knew we had talked about it, but didn't know if it got anything beyond the talk.
No.
So, but thank you for looking. It's the joys of being on the board for a while. You remember those things. Okay, we have a request for a waiver.
Yes.
Actually, would that constitute?
I was wondering the same thing, and either I can pull out my code book and go through all the nitty-gritty of does that meet every standard, or you can just grant a waiver to accept that.
I would think, because this
Yes.
plan doesn't show
I
all the
haven't
meets and
reviewed that
bounds.
one with a fine-tooth comb for if it meets
Yes,
the
yes.
correct scale and has the correct,
Okay.
I don't think it has topo lines,
No.
like, I can run through the checklist if you want, or,
Yeah, I think we would request a vote on the waiver.
Yeah. So that would be, just wanted to double check to see if it would work. Doesn't sound like it will. the idea of accepting that as the overall locust plan, which does not take the place of the waiver.
And I would note that
Wait,
it
it
looks
does
like
or
your
does not take
revised
it?
plan.
Because it doesn't have
mentions
topos, it
the
doesn't
waiver
have all the
request, so
standards
just
that we
add the
require
date.
Oh,
for
right.
the thing, so.
What's that?
Well,
Oh,
that
yeah.
doesn't,
Yeah.
but this
Yeah.
does. It has 1 foot increments on it
Right,
and
but we have
everything.
to have that for the overall plan.
Oh.
It has to meet all those
I'm looking
standards.
at, okay.
Unless we grant a waiver specifically saying no. to
That
that.
the
So we still
overall
need,
plan.
the overall plan still has to meet all the standards,
I get you, okay. So,
designers, drawing standards. So, yeah, we still need to deal with the waiver. Just a thought.
okay, so given that the overall plan is so all-encompassing and we have a different plan that shows the details, I'd make a motion to grant the waiver.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, motion by Mr. Kreider, second by Ms. B. Smith to grant the waiver. Discussion.
Clarification, is that subject to the condition I listed in my staff report for technicality?
You mean like, does
That
it
they add
show
the
all
notes to
the
the plan?
increments and?
Okay, yes.
I suggested a condition for the waiver that a note be added to the plan identifying the requested waiver, which has been added currently, and date of approval, which would be added if you
Oh,
vote on it.
yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. I would take that by rote, so. But yes, that would be one of the amendments to the waiver, was that
All that's noted on
the waiver request and the approval date be added to the plan. Okay, further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of granting the waiver to section 7B, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Those abstaining? Okay. I have that as 400. Okay.
Yeah.
Have you made the updates for snow storage, parking light, fixtures, labels?
There is a note for snow storage
Okay.
that should satisfy that. There is a note about the FEMA floodplain, so that should be satisfied. There is a note about lighting fixtures, but I don't see them depicted in their proposed locations on the plan.
I can address that because the architectural plans don't show any lights on the building.
No exterior lights?
Yeah.
Okay.
But I added the note saying if there are any lights, that they are downlit and shielded from abutters.
Okay.
And I do have, I mean, I have a detail also on the detail sheet that shows that as well. But the plans that were submitted to me by the architect don't show lights on the building.
Okay. I would consider A to be addressed then.
Does that mean-
Condition B, what I was referring to specifically, because the light gray and the dark gray may not copy out, I would ask that, I think at this point, it's basically just that one sliver, where you could just add a new arrow from shade indicates new pavement.
Okay, yeah,
Just to make sure that there's no confusion in the
Sure.
future.
yep.
I think you have that.
I do, but no, it does, but if you go up, there's that little tiny sliver
little
right through
sliver.
there, yeah. Yeah, you can add that too.
And I think I actually assumed it was the wrong shading in my head the first time I looked at this.
Well, I think the first time I had it, they were all like the same color.
Yeah.
So I
and
changed.
This gray's a lot
I changed
clearer.
the grays, and then I changed the one where we removed pavement over here with just a slashed.
Okay.
But yeah.
So essentially, I would leave condition B under the following changes to the plan. I guess that would just be condition 1, that B will be made to the plan set, consistently label and remove, or the new landscape and remove pavement areas.
Okay. Okay. So we have one potential condition, which is, one, if
I
you're looking at
didn't-
James's,
Jeff, you
Sorry.
said with the saw cut,
No.
you were
Something else.
regrading. That's the regrading on the parking space side?
That's, that's the regrading through here. So in order to really make that work, this pavement all would come out for them to do the landscaping and that. So this would all just blend back into the existing.
Okay,
So you see where I have the proposed contours as it comes through, that would be a saw cut, so they remove that out, they do the work they need to do, and then the new pavement would blend right back into that same elevation.
okay. Anecdotally, I guess, what's your opinion of this quality of the access from that curb cut in terms of the grading immediately on site and site distance? I know that's something that's existing,
Yep.
but is that something that you and or DOT, in your opinion, would consider to be satisfactory, or are there improvements that could be made?
Oh, I think there's plenty of site distance as you look both ways in this area, because you can see, I don't know what the distances will be, but you have good distance before it starts to turn to the curve to the left, way down beyond past the little cottages as you're heading towards Concord. And then if we look coming out of that and looking towards Lee's traffic circle, out of that driveway, you have really good sight distance all the way down to probably close to the Bow Lake intersection, Bow Lake Road intersection.
yeah.
So that would exceed any of the minimum standards that DOT has. But since it's an existing driveway, that we're not changing any grades in that area, we're not changing any of the contours or any of the sight distance access points, we didn't include that in the sight distance part.
Sure.
If I could comment a concern I have. I parked down in here during the deliberative session, and I went to go out, and it's like a launching pad there. The grade is terrible to get out on there. Have you driven down in there?
Down where? Down?
Yeah.
Down off of here,
Yes. Oh, yes. Yep.
and you gotta kind of
It comes
surge to
comes
get
up
up.
into that space, and if you look at the contours, there's kind of like a flat table before you get into that. Yeah.
Well, the
It's
problem
more-
is
they're
that
1 foot
you're-
contours, so as you come up, you're into that space.
You gotta gun it to get out of the parking lot. I mean, the exit. To get up out of there, you're lower than the road.
Yeah, you are lower than the road as you come up, as of Route 4 as you come up into that, yes. Yep.
I didn't know if there was any change of,
We changed the roof
642, 643 up here, so it's a change of about a foot.
2 foot, yeah.
I don't know, I'm telling you,
Not disagreeing with you.
I'm just bringing it up.
But if we do try to go in there and we start working
Yeah,
on
if we
grading
start
that,
writing
it's
it,
gonna
then
be a
it's gonna
DOT
change
can of worms.
T aspects, so
Yeah.
I think you're smarter to not touch it.
I mean, I guess, if we could argue that there's less parking, so there's less traffic, but I don't know.
I'll just park somewhere else the next time.
Yeah. Or get a bigger car, more cylinders.
Well, yeah.
Okay,
I
further
have a
discussion?
question. Yeah, well,
Go
coming through here, Jeff,
Yep.
a car could drive through here, for example, or a van to drop off somebody?
Yeah, because some of the heavier band equipment, and that's why I didn't completely block that off.
Okay.
But that's why there's also, a do not enter sign there for somebody that doesn't know what they're doing. But if you're going to be dropping off musical equipment or
Right.
art supplies, you can come into that side to do that.
Okay, so that's
Yeah.
why you left that.
That's why I left that there. But
Okay.
my idea is currently there's parking right there, and students do walk through that pathway to get through cars to get to the building. With this design, that gets rid of that.
So it's no longer
There's
through.
there's no longer cars in that space that are going to park there all the time.
I saw somebody pull up here and do an ADA.
Bob, we don't usually get into how they deal with the singular safety aspects that's up to them to deal with, like, crosswalks and stuff internal to their property, is it not?
Depends.
I
I mean, in general, it's a school.
Yeah, so that's what I mean, we don't really get into that. They would,
Not really on private property.
Okay,
I mean,
that's enough.
if it was Route 4 or crossing a public street.
no, this is, I'm talking about in through here, you know, like, we don't talk about cross hatches or white things, and so, okay.
Well, yeah, not really.
Yeah, and what I'm trying to do there is you see that the way that landscape bulges off of the building and bulges off there.
Right,
Is to
yeah.
really neck that down to create
Yeah.
that separator between the two.
Exactly.
But that's your design consideration to meet, you know, some safety standards or things that you think is appropriate. That's not for really us to comment on, is it?
Well, we can. I mean, we can comment on it. It's a question of, let me phrase it this way. I don't have a problem if we see a concern,
Express it, but it's up to them.
express it, but if it's not backed up by regulation, we really can't take action on it. We can express a concern.
I thought pedestrian walkways were part of the site plan regulation.
Okay.
Yeah, so, do you have,
No, I just wanted to understand
No?
that, I wanted to at least ask if there was a possibility if somebody was in a van and needed ADA access,
Yep.
the van could back up here, let somebody off and
Yep.
out.
And that's why I would asked about ADA access thinking as well,
Yeah.
that if, you had wanted a parking space for ADA compliance, or ADA availability, easy availability for a staffer, in that, you could pick one of the
other.
parking lot, parking space number 5.
After you've
Could
let the person
be- Have a
off.
sign for that, and you'd have, with the landscaped area, as long, it looks like it's gonna be level, that could be, you'd have van access. But we have something from the assistant headmaster saying that they have plenty
They're
of
set.
ADA compliance, so,
Yeah,
or
they're
parking,
set.
so you're fine. But yeah, your point is well taken, that you can
You can get in
drop
there.
somebody off
Yeah,
and then they go park.
yeah, okay.
The past package, but it may help you think about.
No, I'm all set on that.
You are? Okay,
Yeah,
all right.
I'm all set.
I guess this is like fence.
Bollard, or maybe, I think it's Bollard.
Oh, the line on there?
The
That's-
dash.
That's like a split rail fence that they have along the walkway.
Okay.
So what's
Yeah, so that's all pedestrian walkways.
Is this rock wall?
The little
Yeah, that's like
C-shape.
that's like a little rock wall on that side. That's all, everything on this side is all,
Yes.
it's all pedestrian, it's not vehicle access. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I do remember seeing that. Okay. So the only thing that's left then, James, is your item B? Condition.
Yeah, so that would essentially be condition 1.
Right.
Just to firm up that labeling. Condition 2, 3 signed and stamped copies of the entire plan set then for signature.
So just for, I don't forget anything, I'll open the public comment section on this hearing. And seeing as there are no members of the public here, I will close public comment section. Okay, any further discussion?
No, I don't think so. I mean, it's all within an existing envelope that's already, I mean, there's hardly any changes other than what's right within something that already exists.
Yep. We granted the waiver, we have nothing else. I would entertain a motion.
Motion
wanted to
to
make it.
approve the plan with conditions as stated by,
Okay. Case 19-1, Co-Brown Academy, condition 1, consistently label all areas of new landscape / remove pavement and new pavement or further distinguish the shading hatching for each area to avoid possible confusion. Condition 2, prior to the signing of plans, deliver 3 signed and stamped copies of the plan for signature.
I just want to double check on something on that. Well, I'll second the motion.
Yep. Thank you.
But then for the discussion, Jeff, you said something about no outside lights. Will that be on the drawings also?
Well, it's on the architectural plans that were submitted with the package.
Okay.
They're on there. But knowing that what happens out there, that's not ever always the case. I don't know where they're going to go, but I wanted to make sure that we had a note in there so indicating that they're downlit and that they're shielded.
Okay.
So that way it covers that aspect
So-
if they do it, so that if they do decide to put a big giant floodlight that goes across Route 4,
Well, that's what I'm thinking.
then the code office can come in and shut that down.
Okay, that's good. So,
I think your neighbors might shoot it
Yeah,
out first.
exactly.
It's Northwood.
Yeah.
Okay, so motion by Ms. P. Smith for approval, second by Mr. Kreider, with 2 conditions as read. Further discussion?
No.
Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Those abstaining? Did you say anything?
I moved my mouth. I said it too, but
Okay, thank you. Okay, you're approved.
Just so
Perfect.
quiet
Thank you.
tonight, huh?
Thank you.
thanks, Jeff.
Nice little crowd.
Yeah, that's good.
Good luck on your time frame.
Yeah, it's going to be a rush. Yeah.
I've got one that I wanted to bring up.
Thank you, good night.
Thanks, Leslie. Included in the zoning code is a provision for home businesses that authorizes me in consultation with the building inspector to issue home business permits. And we issued 3 or 4 last year, and that process seemed to work pretty well, and we had a form template for that. One property came in September and was approved for a home business permit for a bed and breakfast. Sorry, I was hearing some kind of feedback. The resident also has a forestry business, and so they came back and wanted to also have that forestry business on site. So the discussion issue that we ran into, in that section there's a description of a home office that doesn't qualify as a home business, doesn't need a permit, you can just use a room for an office. Because she was also going to have some equipment, I didn't feel that the description of a home office fit. There is also a competing description in Northwood's zoning ordinance for a service business that does fit and apparently has historically been applied, that service businesses don't need a permit. And I think the logic is if you're acting as a consultant, there's no difference between you're typing at your computer inside, hopping in your car and going to meet with somebody, than there is you playing computer games on your computer inside, hopping in your car and going to work. But I felt that the language in the ordinance that described that as a commercial use meant that you would either need site plan approval for it, or you would need to be a home office, or you would need to be a home business, and the home business only allows one. So we resolved this particular case by applying the precedent of service businesses don't need a permit and she can go ahead. But I feel that the language for that whole process for how that was resolved is unclear and should be improved. So I would suggest to the board that if we have zoning issues that we would like to do this year, that we handle them throughout the year, at least in terms of starting to put together some changes that we would then approve at some point later this year to go on a ballot. And I would tentatively suggest bringing some possible language or proposals to you at the workshop in March, if you are amenable to discussing this issue.
So essentially, we found, well,
I feel that the existing structure is somewhat contradictory and doesn't support the interpretation that a service business doesn't need a permit of any kind. The easiest fix that I sort of have in my head, and I haven't pulled the individual language, but I know the town of Barrington distinguishes between a home occupation and a home business, and I think a similar...
we did that for years.
Yeah.
Yeah, home occupation did not need a permit for it.
So right now we have a service business definition and no description of what to do with it. The only two mentions of the term service business are the definition and the table of uses that shows what column it is in terms of what performance standards it needs to meet. So I would say that since it isn't in the home office category or a home occupation category, that
was Mr. Sullivan. Wasn't it?
No, that goes back.
That change was noted as 2001, I think.
Really? That long
The
ago?
service business, it's my belief that the service business was put in there to cover those type of businesses, such as whether it's a contractor like a electrician who brings a truck home at night
Right.
and goes out and does everything off-site. It's very clear, it says
Right.
everything's off-site, so that there was no question about vehicles that were parked and that
Right,
type of thing.
Right.
But it was with the intent that it would be exempt from site plan, but it does not clearly say that. I think it was the intent and how it's always been done. But I think James has raised an excellent point that we need to clarify.
So
that if
I
it
don't have
meets that.
strong objections to continuing to do things the way they've been done,
Yes.
but I don't think the code tells us we can. So I
Right.
would suggest that we fix that.
Yeah, because I always thought service businesses worked as home occupation.
Right,
Yeah.
No,
right,
you know,
exactly.
no questions about it, and you didn't need it. But I think when we moved away from simplified the code by having getting rid
And
of home
I
occupation.
would also suggest that a service business isn't necessarily a home occupation type thing. For a
Right.
single operator, it absolutely could be.
Yes.
But that definition could also fit a landscaping company that employs 5 or 6 or 10 people.
Sure.
So I would suggest that, and maybe I can work with Linda to look at what had been on the books to see if going back might make more sense, but that we remove the reliance of service business on that distinction and go back to a home occupation, home business distinction for what needs a permit and what does not.
I'm fine with that. Anybody have an issue or questions?
No, I think James is right. If you've been doing it with that presumption, it's sort of like that driveway thing. If that's the way we've always been interpreting unpaved driveways, then we tried to clarify it. So now we uncovered something else that we've always been doing it this way. Well, let's get it codified so that
Agreed.
And it felt kind of silly to be trying to explain to this applicant why she shouldn't be able to do this under the letter of our ordinance. But I think that the letter conflicted with the precedent.
Yeah.
So I will show you something about
Okay. Sounds good.
how I think it can be improved.
Anything else from staff?
The only thing I have, and it was brought up at the ZBA on Monday by Ms. Sanderson, is the upcoming planning and zoning conference. I did go online yesterday, and it's saying that more information will be forthcoming. It is a little later this year, so if anybody's curious about attending, it is going to be in June, I think.
Oh.
But there still is nothing on their website, so when there is, we'll try to get it out to you. Oh, yeah, we have correspondence. I think this is the first time we got a public notice for a cell tower that's actually far enough ahead that if anybody wants to drive to Newmarket for the hearing, they can.
Oh, wow.
No, they just provided notice that it's happening, right? They didn't declare it a regional impact.
No.
Thank goodness for that.
Is it going to improve
Full
service in the
application
Dennis
is
Pond area?
available to view.
No.
Minor site plan and special use permit.
No cell tower for you.
The
Would you like to
cell
go?
tower on top of Catamount
There you go.
Yeah,
is,
doubt that there was a regional
I'm
impact.
trying to think, I looked it up once. All the major carriers have dropped it. It's quite odd. There's not either not enough business or did they want too much money or something to that effect.
Oh.
So it just sits there and blinks at you?
Yeah, I think they're down to, I want to say it's only T-Mobile, but don't quote me on that. So, yeah, you would think that everybody would like that because it covers such a big area that there's not enough density. So, that's my suspicion.
I have another question. At the last meeting, Linda, did you mention there was some to do about the changes that we had recommended may or may not be on the
Yes, you'll
ballot?
hear more about that in 2 weeks.
Okay,
at
so
the-
nothing's resolved yet.
Nothing's resolved. Hopefully by the work session on the, is it the 14th? We'll know more.
Wait,
So we have
isn't the election
confirmed,
over by then?
Yep.
we have confirmed that the zoning amendments will not be on the ballot. And
Oh,
that's,
so that's, oh, I thought it was maybe,
It's just the reason we can't know yet.
no, so I thought there was still a possibility when we spoke last time. Oh, so they're off and,
we've confirmed they will not appear on the
Oh.
ballot for town meeting.
okay.
And that's
Okay, so
all that has been decided.
okay, so that was my real question. Okay, so that's decided and done, okay,
You will not see them.
okay.
Okay. I don't have any internal business correspondence.
Just that.
Just
That
the
was
cell
Cell
tower
tower
notice.
thing.
Okay. Signature files, just one?
No. Yeah, a repeat. But that's a long story.
Okay. I'll take care of that in a bit. Anything else?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Point of discussion beforehand is that if you haven't noticed, there are 2 seats open on the ballot that Mr. Kreider and Mr. McCaffrey's terms are up. We have no one running officially to replace them. That means that if you can, somebody wants to launch a write-in campaign, or you have
Rain now.
pardon?
I'd like to publicly announce I'm open for a write-in vote on that.
Okay. So noted. That wasn't the reason I brought it up, but good timing.
Yeah, thank you.
I will point out that our vice chair has been, what was it, 3 votes? 4 votes, 2 votes for write-ins, and she accepted. So if you have somebody in mind, there are no qualifications around running for office. My only request would be that you notify first.
Nobody told me. Did Victoria say that she might be interested in write-in? Does anybody know? Or do I have to talk to her?
She had expressed potential interest to me. She, I think, was a little concerned about the optics of having first missed the filing deadline and then campaigning for a write-in. Any more than that, I think you would have to talk to Victoria, but she is potentially interested in serving if there
Because I've
is.
only been nagging her for like the past 4 years, so.
She was on the board, and
Yeah,
was she also an alternate at some
Yes.
point?
She was on the board. She was an alternate.
She was an alternate.
She has.
One of our commissioners, representatives to the regional planning.
Yeah.
She's been on the
She's on the
planning
board.
board.
Is she still director?
Hey, while I'm thinking about it, is there any restrictions on like husband-wife
Chair.
teams?
No,
No.
not really. The only problem with that would be if you were abutters and it made it not a quorum because both of you had to recuse yourself.
Well, I wasn't thinking of myself.
Yeah, but, see, like I was threatening to write in my kid, so,
I don't think there's no.
because he's 18.
Okay.
Well, the other thing to keep in mind is we have alternate spots open as well. So I just find it very interesting that we have multiple slots open for select board, multiple for budget, and multiple for school board, 0 for planning board. I don't know if that says anything about the chair or not.
No, I don't think it says anything about the chair. I think it's the length of the meetings.
It's what?
It's the length of the meetings. It
Okay.
takes a while to do this
Yeah,
job.
it does.
Same with budget committee. It's a very involved board, and zoning board is still
Oh, yeah.
missing one full member, and
There's some people running for budget committee, but not nearly enough.
I think there's only 3 out of 7 names.
Really?
Yeah, the budget committee hit a particularly bad glitch there,
Right.
or timing thing that,
No. Okay.
Right now, everybody hates the budget committee, so.
Yeah. I don't think they ever win anything. They're about as bad as school board in terms of public appreciation. Everybody appreciates what they do, but nobody likes them. Say it that way. Okay.
The depreciating public isn't running, are they?
We're adjourned at 8:45.